Welcome, dear audience, to part 3 of the 2020's Crap Simulation series. The series dedicated to reliving the dumbest time in our lives that only seems to be accelerating at an unprecedented rate. And yeah, that one is gonna need one hell of a going over once we learn it was an inside job. But before we begin, let's remember where we got to so far. Well, someone released a Kung Flu virus and a bunch of incredible geniuses got the idea of collapsing our economies with Zimbabwe level economics by telling everyone not to bother turning up to work while at the same time printing vast amounts of money to pay them not to do so. Absolute genius, mate. How is that inflation? And then we came to the greatest summer of everlasting love the world has ever seen, where everyone thought burning down their own neighborhoods would totally own the Chud government. Well, that didn't work for Detroit, and it ain't gonna work for Minneapolis now, is it? Although hardly anyone watched that one, as it got nuked with restrictions big time. So where did part 2 leave us? Ah yes, we were coming to the 2020's US election, the most safeliest and most secureliest election ever held in the history of elections ever. So I guess that means nothing to see here. Move along, audience, video finished. Well, that was easy. I guess I can get back to playing Fallout London then. But what if I was to tell you that things were a little bit more retarded than what we remember? Now, for some reason, the entire world is heavily invested in who takes over the helm of the United States, especially those that have oil. But this one had reached a fever pitch. A global extravaganza for the entire planet to feast their eyes upon. And there was absolutely no escaping it. And that included the once great nation of the United Kingdom, where all those media outlets told us what they thought of an election that they could not vote in, and how we should feel about each candidate that we could not vote for. But to be fair, this is a traditional British pastime. It's pretty much like checking up on the kids now, really, isn't it? And in the former colony of tea-dumping traitors, it would be a battle the likes the world has never seen. It would be the most importantly election in the history of electioning. Because if those Americans voted for the wrong candidate, then democracy would die forever in the constitutional republic. And that special date of November 3rd, where they got to vote between a donkey or an elephant, was coming harder than Jeffrey Toobin on a Zoom call. Therefore, it was all-out war between the political factions. Each side had to win at all costs because the opposition was totally a fascist or a dirty fucking commie. And for the Democrats to defeat the totally Hitler orange man, they had to bring their youngest and brightest candidate filled with all those squishy hopes and dreams and give the promises of a better future, because right now those petrol prices were looking pretty damn sweet. And to do this, they had to get primarying hard, and hard they got primarying. So from June 2019 to March the 15th, 2020, the Democrat hopefuls lined up with a pocket full of donor cash and special interest groups. Under this administration, Badakaf Care will be, the thing, we will beat Medicare, and under my leadership, I promise to raise the taxes to fund, Anyway, I've got hairy legs. I am once again asking you to donate to my campaign. The capitalist system may have put millions of dollars into my bank account, but it'll be the billionaires who pay for what they have done to this country. And so will all of you. Under my presidency, I will commit to raising taxes. My tribe and I have watched the moon and talked to the antelope. The wolf howls to the flying eagle. And if I become president, not only will I increase taxes, I will commit to playing centre back for the Washington Redskins. Yeah, I'm just going to remind everyone that Kamala Harris kept people in jail past their release date to use as slave labour and withheld evidence from an innocent man on death row until the judge rules that she must release the evidence. Because not only is she a total bitch, she's also a lying scumbag who oversaw 1,500 people go to jail for smoking a little bit of the old devil lettuce, but then laughed about lighting up a big fat doobie with a guy that glues his eyebrows on. What a complete morally devoid asshat that woman truly is. And so with the initial rounds of primarying over, the pool became smaller, with Harris dropping out after everyone realised how much of a twat she is, polling under 3%. And soon after, others followed, like Mike Bloomberg, the guy nobody likes. And then Pete Buttigieg, the guy who is always fashionably late, including to toxic train derailments. And then there were just two young and beautiful hopeful dreamers left, Biden and Bernie fucking Sanders. I am once again asking you for your financial support so I can tax all the billionaires, because having fatter stacks than I in a bank account is morally wrong. Here's the deal, folks. My father used to discuss gas prices around the kitchen table back in the 50s, and I was a coal miner as well. I may have even driven a big rig once or twice, but to point out that about 150 million billion trillion dollars and Anyway, please vote for me to be your senator. So, with everyone committing to tax rises and relying on the formation of coherent sentence structures to get their policy points through, somehow the great Biden sleptwalked his way to the nomination. And things were about to get real spicy as the campaign to November 2020 was now in full swing. And Biden had to make his vice presidential pick. Now, usually you'd expect presidential runs to consist of cold hard meritocracy and selectively picking the best candidate to widen your support base. A candidate who has name recognition with a charisma that is palatable to the wider public. And certainly didn't get to the top by being the sock puppet to a corrupt Californian Assembly Speaker by the name of Mr. Big Willie Brown. Well, if you thought it was all going to be based on meritocracy, then you were wrong. Dead wrong with AIDS. Because not only had Biden committed to selecting a female VP, he was also going to make sure that she was black too. Or Indian. You know what? Just change the race whenever it fits narratives. No one cares. Because after all, it doesn't matter how effective you are, you only need to fulfill the DEI bingo bucket of cringe to get promoted to offices that you did not earn. Or just slide it off until you reach the top. And so he chose Kamala fucking Harris, the black man incarcerator in chief. So he began a campaigning where the orange man travelled across those great states standing on stage after stage surrounded by supporters and suspiciously slightly sloped roofs. And he was telling them that if they chose Biden, then they can kiss goodbye to their fuel prices and watch as the southern border became a shit show of incompetence. A claim so ludicrous and absurd it just could never happen under a Biden presidency. Definitely not. Absolutely impossible. And for his claims that it would cause a destabilization of the Middle East through terrible foreign policy, he can get the fuck out of here. Is that man on drugs? But elsewhere, there was a little bit of an issue brewing, because that orange man was out there rallying big time, and it was looking more and more likely that it was going to be a second term of global stability, and the only person who could stop the orange man tsunami was... well, he was in a basement in Delaware, all rallying in half-empty parking lots, retelling the story of how gas prices were kitchen table issues, or telling everyone that he's not taking away their AR-14s. The best gun on the planet. It wasn't going well, meaning that there was only one entity left that could pull off the perfect weekend at Biden's and wheel him over the line come election day. The mainstream media. Guys, I've just got a word that Biden had just said that black people are a hive mind of Democrat voters, unlike the Latino community, who are more diverse in their thinking. Any more of this and we're in serious danger of the black vote realizing that our narrative of sell the hope and never solution is the reason their city neighborhoods are absolute shitholes. We must deflect this right now. What? He was saying the quiet part out loud? This is terrible. I think I know how we can turn this one around, guys. It's called the classic distraction tactic. Ahem. Did you know Trump once complimented Putin, the leader of a powerful nation? And that means that he is a danger to democracy. My God, after hearing that, I just completely forgot what Biden said. And now I'm focusing my entire attention on how the orange man is trying to get us into another world war. It is basically the playbook of Hitler. Yeah, not only that, he also asked a 7-year-old girl if she still believes in Santa. What? He asked a girl about Santa? Oh, that definitely means he's going to nuke California this time. Whose hatred of democracy knows no bounds. Hey, I've got an even greater idea. Since Trump is dictatoring all the time, how's about we accuse him and all of his supporters of being a bunch of authoritarian enablers? Because if Hillary Clinton can call a large portion of the US population deplorables, insulting them this time is going to change everyone's mind. They will be voting Democrat come the morning. Do any of you guys realize that this is not going to work? The political camps have already been long set, and now all we have left is to battle it out between independents. What do you mean? Have you not noticed that this entire time we have been preaching to our own choir with all these articles? Do you think any of those far-right Republican bigots with their yees and their haws are going to read a CNN article and suddenly vote for a corpse? They don't believe us whatever we write. Yeah, it must be because they can't read. I agree, that has to be the reason why they don't believe us. It is the failing school system, because they didn't even believe us when we told them Trump said that there were very fine people on both sides back in Charlottesville. It was the most racist thing he had done all that month. I think that was because they actually watched the full video instead of our clipped version of it, where he clearly condemned the 1940s Germany men and were white supremacists. Hey, how's about we just objectively report the facts? Let the American people decide who is a better candidate. You know, just be fair with our criticisms on both sides and praise when good is done for our country, the way how journalism is meant to be, and then also hold the establishment to account regardless of who it is and not become a mouthpiece for one political side and lying by omission. People on the right side of the political spectrum are not dumb. They can see clearly what we are doing here. Who the fuck is this guy? Oh, that's Corporal Logic. He pops up now and again making reasoned arguments. We tend to ask him to leave. Oh, okay, should we hear him out for once? You never know, we could actually follow his advice and end up with a larger audience base who respect us and trust our word. And not to forget, it will increase our profits big time. No, it isn't for us to report what happened, it's for us to report what we saw. And he needs to leave. Yeah, there's no place for journalistic bigotry in the United States. Hey, Corporal Logic, get the fuck out of here. And so the churning wheels of borderline retarded articles ejaculate themselves across the United States. It was becoming clear to everyone that if they chose the orange man, who once asked a child about Santa, then in 4 years' time there would not be any democracy left. Because although it already had been 4 years, and they were about to hold another election, if he just had a little bit more time, then he would cancel the next one forever. Totally makes sense. But still, those pesky Republicans were supporting the totally a democracy destroyer orange man. And it was made even worse for the Democrats because not only were petrol prices cheap and real-time wages were up, but now he was normalizing relations across the Middle East through the Abraham Accords, which was exactly Hitler's plan all along. But to the media, they could not let the American people think that his foreign policy was working towards peace and global stability. After all, it's not going to get any bombs sold now, is it? And so across the headlines, they mocked the fact that there was never war between Israel and the country signing up to peace and recognition treaties. You know, completely ignoring the fact that this was a first stepping stone towards larger treaties that would also lower Iran's influence in the region, and one day would hopefully stop children getting blown up in drone strikes. However, surprisingly, that line of attack failed, as it was widely recognized that this was quite a monumental moment and credit was given where it was due. The orange man did well there. But a few Otto Spaghettios that the Republicans could not ignore were starting to float to the surface of the toilet bowl, and it was emboldening the Democrat-controlled media's attack upon him. The first was the orange man's constant autistic rage ejaculations on Twitter, where he would conduct official responses to public officials that he disagreed with, mostly by calling them losers. Now, for edgelords such as myself, reading about how everyone was a loser kind of got a few chuckles. However, when it comes to the game of politics, kind of need to look a little bit more serious than calling Meryl Streep an overrated actress and Stormy Daniels a horse-faced liar, no matter how true it was. All that time he said wind turbines kill birds, which is totally an inaccurate statement that the media had to fact check and argue that he's exaggerating, but the birds are literally dying. Ah yes, it's that classic game of mental gymnastics all over again now, isn't it? The next Otto Spaghettios was his promotion of hydroxychloroquine as a therapeutic against the totally evil Kung Flu China virus, and how his rhetoric had sent fans crazy buying all the products that had that sweet compound in. Like fish tank cleaner, for example, that killed a man to death and seriously injured his wife after ingesting it when trying to protect themselves from the old Rona. My god, that must mean that it was the orange man's fault that happened. And the public must know that he's totally deranged and not fit to lead the country. Well, that was until she got arrested and accused of intentionally murdering her husband and was a Democrat donor. So that one kind of fell apart, but there was another that stuck so hard that even to this day people cite the news articles and and never the actual video. The orange man stood on the stage alongside medical professionals and told those dirty, dirty Americans to drink bleach. Yes, that's right, audience. The orange man said verbatim, "Hey guys, the Rona is hella scary, you should drink bleach. May I suggest a cocktail of lemon-scented Clorox? It goes down lovely on a hot summer's day, and it's very cheap like my gas prices." Which caused the media to go into utter meltdown mode. Don't drink bleach. The orange man is unqualified. Who's trying to genocide the population like the 1940s Germany man did? But as that lie that was once again borderline slandered across the world, pouring ridicule on the presidential office of the United States, certain people with half a brain cell watched the actual video, where it turned out he said disinfectant. The media lied about what he actually said, and half the electorate believed him because they're too stupid to check the information themselves. It's almost as if the media are controlled exclusively by Democrats and are purposely trying to spread fake news to influence an election. Nah, that would be crazy, right? Could never happen. It's just like all those work from home hit piece articles that the Daily Mail keeps releasing. Are they right and we'll look like hags with bad posture in a few years' time? Or is it commercial property owners paying the media to convince the companies to rent their office spaces again because they are losing a shit ton of money? Definitely not. It's all scientific research. But then we come to the final Otto SpaghettiOs. The one that stuck harder than Jeffrey Toobin's keyboard after a Zoom call. The Kung Flu job losses that gave the Democrats all the ammunition needed to mental gymnastics their way to a slam dunk. The orange man had lost all the jobs, and the American people stood gasping. What? It was all his fault that those people got promoted to unemployed? Yes, it was him. He told all those Democrat governors to lock their states down harder than Joseph Fritzl on a cocaine binge, and that resulted in all the heavy job losses. Which was the stick to beat the orange man. Because although it was the governors who were responsible for their own lockdown policies, and the worst affected were Democrat-ran states, always accuse the others of what you did yourself. Oh, the old deflection tactic. Never gets old. So it was going great. Anything the orange man said was being twisted, and anything the Democrats did was all of his fault. Aiding that precious, precious Trump derangement syndrome. And that must mean that his chances of ever getting a second term was as dead as retardy Oswald on a slightly sloped roof. Or was it? The messaging was strong, but those Abraham Accords were far more powerful than all the bleach narratives combined. The population were supporting it, and another 4 years could see even more world peace, which would be a hate crime. Alright, this is really bad, rages the DNC. Yeah, just this morning I overheard my neighbour asking his wife if they should put a Trump sign up in the yard. But I told him if he did that, then I would burn his house down, the hateful bigot. It's like a plague of cockroaches and red hats have descended upon us. Why can't we all just be #kind? Oh man, we're so gonna lose this election. Not so fast. We still have the secret weapon. It is time to release it upon the world. Already? It seems a little drastic, don't you think? Maybe we should just carry on with the messaging, you know, release another late night show where we force feed what kind of politics is acceptable in modern day America, and we'll use a British wank stain as the host who no one actually cares about, and get YouTube to endlessly promote it, because if they didn't, no one will ever watch it. No, I agree with the birthing person. It is indeed time. The proverbial gloves have been taken off, and we must deliver a victory to Biden at all costs. Agreed, it has left us no choice. Unleash Operation Chunk. Dear Lord, have mercy on our soul.
If you kill somebody that doesn't have a weapon on them, you go to jail. You know what? If I kill somebody, I gotta go to jail. You gotta go to jail too.
My God, said the American public. I cannot believe they managed to get the Cardi B to do an interview with a 77-year-old man running to be a senator. Not only did they discuss issues that relate to my personal struggles, but I really cared about which way a celebrity of the political understanding of a fungus is going to vote in the upcoming election. Oh, how very important that celebrity interview was. Because the last time something like that happened, Biden told that guy who glues his eyebrows on that if the entire country did not vote for him, then they aren't black. Because after all, historically, the Democrats did used to run all the plantations. I guess only now the type of house has changed. And so while the Democrat machine, aided by the paid shields, promoted Biden as totally not Hitler and most definitely mentally cognitive, even though he refused to take tests to prove it, on the other side the Republicans had hit an absolute jackpot. A little something that would influence the election and open the Pandora box of utter shitstorms. The golden block of dreams that would expose the corruption of an entire family. The Hunter Biden laptop. Now, in the United Kingdom, we have our partisan press like every other country does, but anytime there is a political scandal, regardless of sides, for example the cash for honour schemes, or the general election insider betting scandals, is like a vulturistic feeding frenzy. We love it, they love it, and the politicians who have destroyed Airstrip 1 finally get the little bit of their comeuppance. But as news broke that a certain special little boy was an extremely corrupt drug addict and possible PDF file, the complete reverse began to happen. The Global Shield Protection Force Field went full Israeli Iron Dome, and across the world came the absolutely undeniable fact that Hunter Biden's laptop story was none other than Russian disinformation. And to bolster the claim that it was Putin all along, more than 50 former intelligence officers agreed that it was complete horse shit. Which is really interesting, because 9 out of 10 dentists agree that Colgate is the best toothpaste, but 9 out of 10 dentists also agree that Oral-B is the best toothpaste, so which one is it, you fucking liars? It almost smells like those corrupt dentists are getting paid to promote unfounded narratives. Wink wink, nudge nudge. And so the story of how a drugged up corrupt politician's son was peddling influence using his father's name, also known as the big guy, to enrich themselves with testimony by a former business partner confirming that it was all true, came into the light. But strangely, this bombshell revelation was either completely ignored and brushed under the carpet like a war crime, or chalked up to being that very naughty Russia all over again. It truly does surprise me how a country whose alphabet is a dyslexic's worst nightmare can influence so many global events. Well, it's either that, or every time the people vote the wrong way in a free election, it could never have been the policies that caused it. It must have been that foreign boogeyman, therefore no accountability needs to be taken, and it's just used to further divide the nation. So the retaliation attacks from the Democrats began, like on Rudy Giuliani, the man who exposed to the world a laptop from hell was now labelled a Russian agent. And Trump, as his employer, was in on the whole scheme to promote the shady work of Putin. You know, by not buying their oil, refusing Nord Stream 2 due to security risks, and telling Germany to stop being so reliant on Russian energy. Which is exactly what Putin wanted all along. It's like that orange man is reading from Hitler's playbook. Yet still, with each passing day, those poll numbers were not shifting. The election was on a knife edge. This is terrible! Even that Pennsylvania hasn't swung massively for Biden, even when he promised to close down their industry and lose them a bunch of jobs. We need to double down and go even harder at the orange man. I say we find some slightly sloped roofs and a rangefinder. Now, Hillary, this is America. We don't take out our political opponents unless they have information that will directly lead to our arrest. But what can we do? Letting this election go to the people would be like 2016 all over again. Guys, I think I've just received the proverbial bullet we needed. I have just got an email so damning it is the access to that slightly sloped roof you were dreaming of, Hillary. What? What is it? I have received word from an unknown source at the White House that during a trip to France in 2018 to commemorate the fallen soldiers of the World Wars, Trump refused to go to the cemetery to honor them and instead called them a bunch of suckers and losers. My God, he really said that? I mean, it must be true if you're telling me this. Why else would someone claim he said that if he didn't? But I've never heard of anyone working at the White House called an unnamed source. What's he like, a butler or something? No. It's an unnamed source, a source who doesn't want to be identified. But we're journalists. We have to report facts and not hearsay by an unknown person. We'll look like complete partisan hacks writing something like that. Do not realize what we're doing here. If we claim it was an unnamed source in the White House, then we can literally make up anything we want and not get sued for it. I mean, we could even have someone take a photo of a toilet with shredded paper inside and claim Trump was destroying documents by flushing them. Do you not understand the power behind this method of journalism? Oh, right, that totally makes sense. Yeah, I agree, that makes a lot of sense. So, we're lying, but not lying because we're saying someone else said it happened. Exactly that. Well, I cannot wait to use this tactic more in the future. And so the Great Atlantic article was published for the world to see. And immediately it was grasped upon by the Democrats to run suspiciously immediate campaign ads, ensuring the entire electorate knew that the unnamed source at the White House had finally exposed the orange man for who he truly was. But there was a little bit of an issue though, because that claim was heavily disputed by the people who were actually there. And one of those persons was a man by the name of John Bolton, who definitely has no love for the orange man and claimed by all means it was complete horse shit. However, for those who believed anything the media tells them and have diarrhea bucket brains, the damage was done. The lie had spread and there was no convincing them otherwise. Curses! This still isn't working. Half the population doesn't believe anything we say anymore, and the other half are already voting Democrat anyway, so it doesn't matter. It looks like this election will have to be put towards blind faith, and just hope that the articles have worked. Yeah, I was talking to my friend today, and when I told him Trump called dead soldiers sucking and losers, he looked me square in the eye and asked me, am I retarded? We could claim Trump will refuse to leave office if he loses. I like that idea, but we've already published all those articles. Hey, how's about we accuse him of being Hitler again? That's a great idea. It will totally work the 1000th time we do it. No, this election will be like 2016 all over again. We'll bitch and we'll whinge the election was stolen from us and it was all Russia's fault. But it will never change a thing. Because the last time I did that, I got exposed years later for paying a corrupt MI6 agent to write a dossier and waste millions of taxpayers' dollars investigating false claims. That's right, kiddery. So do we just accept it if we lose this time? Who said that we would lose? What are you saying there, kiddery? We thought Cardi B would swing us this election. We also thought telling black people that they must vote for us or they have no melanin in their skin would put us up in every swing state. But alas, we are still at the same position we started at. I was hoping it would not come to this, but it is time. No, it can't be. I thought we had this election in the bag. There is nothing we can't do when we work together, unless it's a slightly sloped roof. It is time we now bring out mail-in voting. My God, you're crazy! Everyone knows that method of voting is a cesspit of fraud. Everyone on both sides have been saying it for years. Hell, even when the English tried it, a bunch of people got convicted of fraud. We just won't get away with it. Silence, naysayer! When you hold the puppet strings, you hold the narrative. Mail-in voting has always been a safe method of electing leaders. There has never been fraud on a scale of any size. But the people aren't going to gobble this sudden change of our election process up. They will accept it because if you go voting in person at a booth, then 10 grandmas will be killed immediately by the coronavirus. You're right. We must ensure everyone votes by mail so no one catches COVID. It's a genius move. But they can still vote in person, right? Yes, they can still vote in person in a booth like the traditional way. So what do we do when the Republicans claim that if you can still vote in person, then fundamentally changing the election system to allow mail-in ballots is unnecessary and opens the door for fraud? We call them granny-killing bigots, of course, and then get every social media platform and search engine to censor any suggestion of potential fraud. And in effect create a one-party narrative, which is exactly how it should be in a free nation, with a constitution that protects free speech. Oh yeah, just like how we got the FBI to censor any mentioning of the Hunter Biden laptop being real on social media, and even somehow we got a mainstream media outlet banned from Twitter. We are so democratic, it's enough to explode Rachel Levine's nuts. And so across the United States, suddenly a federal voting tradition of absentee and paper ballots gained an addition. The mail-in ballot. The one where you could be dead and still somehow receive a ballot you never requested, which is convenient because how else are you going to vote for Biden? Makes total sense. But that did lead to a lot of really dangerous conspiracy theories. Are the Democrats allowing mail-in voting just so it influences the outcome of an election? No, you dirty bigots. There may have been an entire bucket of examples where fraud has taken place, but in the United States of America, it could never happen. When it did in Grenade County, Alabama, and then East Chicago, Indiana, and then Martin in Kentucky, hell, there's an entire 20 pages of examples to go by. And that's the only people who got caught. But in the 2020s, it would never happen. No fraud at all. So with a fundamental change, it came to the final stages to the election. The presidential debates. The one where the orange man would be facing off between a corpse corpse and a moderator, who as a man of honor made sure any point he was trying to make was interrupted so the American people would not investigate further and find out they're all a bunch of lying asswipes. Because after all, it's not up to the people to decide using facts and logics. That's why you have journalists tell you what they thought happened.
You know, they used to say, I built the cages, and then they had a picture in a certain newspaper, and it was a picture of these horrible cages. Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what
Who built the cages,
Let's
Joe?
talk about.
But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups?
Sure,
are you
I'm willing
prepared
to
to
do that,
specifically
but
do it?
Well,
I
go
would
ahead,
say,
sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you gotta be
not
kidding.
militia. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers.
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. He
For
wasn't dishonorably.
cocaine use. And once you
None
became
of that
vice
is
president,
true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
But why
I'm
was he
proud of
given
my
tens
son.
of millions
All
of
right.
dollars?
But he wasn't given
All right.
tens of millions of
He was
dollars.
given
That
tens
is
of
totally,
millions of
that's
dollars.
been totally
President Trump,
discredited.
you've already been
Totally discredited.
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years, you've done nothing.
Let's say the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about? China. I have not had it. The only guy made money from China is this guy.
And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, I hear they paid him $183,000 a month.
My
Job.
son had a drug problem, and I'm proud of him.
And so, once the debate had finished, there was nothing much left to do than the final showdown on November 3rd. It would be a day like no others. Red-blooded Americans stood proudly at the voting booth ready to cast their big fat X to determine who will lead America. Would it be the orange man who has occasionally sent some mean tweets but kept petrol prices low and wage growth up? Or would it be the Obama sock puppet who ran an entire campaign from his basement and his policy platform is not being Trump? Because after all, running the most powerful nation on earth is not about policies and global stability, it's about how mean the tweets are. And as the polls closed and a count began, it was go time. Millions of votes were slapped upon tables and behind every counter stood a ballot inspector. Was that mail-in ballot legitimate? Well, obviously, it's a free and fair election. And so by the time those Americans were going to rest their eyes after a long day of yee-hawing, it was becoming clear that the election winner was indeed the orange man. The president striving for peace and low petrol prices. And the rest, they say, was a history. But during the long night, a sudden change began. A surge for Biden mysteriously appeared, sending shockwaves across the nation. Where did those ballots come from? How did the orange man vote count suddenly dry up with barely an increase, yet Biden was hitting fat stacks after fat stacks? Where did those ballots come from underneath the table? And where was the water leak? What ain't that a story? One that will go down in history as the greatest, most curious election in absolute history ever, so don't question it. Big shout out to all my Patreon boys and guys. You are the reason my mummy calls me a special little boy. Love you all very much.
Subscribe button.
Always right.